Hi, welcome to Business Influencers. My name is Chris Salem. You found us here at TALRadio, an acronym for Touch a Life Foundation. We hope you are enjoying the TALRadio platform. We have been here now since its inception here on the Business Channel now for over 3.5 years. It's hard to believe that this all started during COVID. Wow. Just imagine. But again, the show continues to grow each and every week because of you, the listeners, and we are committed each and every week in helping bring subject matter experts that will help raise your level of a business influence to the next level. And if there's any future content you would like to see on a future show, well, reach out to us here at Chris@ChristopherSalem.com. That's Chris@ChristopherSalem.com. Today's show is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct. Alumni Direct is a new social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together from all different generational types and an opportunity to meet new people for the first time. Now, it is a membership program, taking out all the noise out of social media. No more of those noisy notifications. You get to come in and generate genuine and authentic connections and relationships with the people you choose to interact with. If you'd like some more information about Alumni Direct, you can check them out at alumnidirect.com. That's alumnidirect.com. Well, I'm excited today for today's show. We're going to be talking about life beyond labels. Yes, what a fitting topic and so important. And we're going to be talking today with Kelsey O'Connor. And Kelsey is a former D1 softball social work graduate from NC State. And she now turned to a motivational speaker, a podcast host after delivering a graduation speech that went highly viral. And you could probably see it out there even today. I'm sure she's going to share that with you. And then you can check out our show notes for more information what this wonderful woman has done in this short period of time. She is a young lady that's really on the move and making a difference. And without further ado, we welcome Kelsey O'Connor to the show. Kelsey, how you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. That was such a kind introduction. I
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. Thank you for being here. So let's talk about, I always like to get the background of our guests, what led, around the topic that we're talking about, life beyond labels, that we can kind of talk about what set you down that path of pursuing a life and being an example, even at a young age, of someone with a life beyond labels.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, I was a Division 1 athlete at North Carolina State. And growing up as an athlete, you just take a lot of pride in what you're doing and performing well. And so I was always somebody that was highly ambitious, always wanting to be the best, I was traveling all over the country for softball, trying to get the best grades, the best performance. And as an athlete at NC State, I was just so proud of all these things that I was doing. And I wore a lot of labels that I would probably, if you were to ask me about myself back then, I would have said, I'm an honor student and I'm an athlete, and I would have listed a bunch of labels. And what really kind of changed, we'll talk about life beyond labels, is a moment in my life where I was kind of forced to figure out who I was beyond those things. Unfortunately, my junior year of college, while I was at NC State, I suffered a head injury, about a severe concussion during softball practice. And so because I had had multiple head injuries before, this one was really bad, and it forced me to medically retire from softball, led me to struggling a lot in school. And so pretty much all of a sudden, my whole life had flipped upside down, and all of these tangible achievements and labels and things that I was really wrapped up in and proud of, were essentially kind of gone, or they were super uncertain into the future. And so that's kind of where life beyond labels formed, is just this mindset shift of having to figure out who I was at 20 years old without all the things that I used to be.
Well, it's amazing how you figured this out so a young age, and I can cite with you myself having a number of concussions early on during my teen years and early to mid 20s from sports, so I can relate to that and always being defined by labels, but even not figuring it out until much later than where you are. So I'm so grateful when I hear people like yourself that have figured this out sooner than later that can really inspire people. So, the people that are listening right now, they're going to be business owners, business leaders, but they're people, right? So it doesn't matter if they're hearing this from a business perspective or even a personal perspective. What would you share to them that if it's some of these people are still living their life or, wearing a mask, so to speak, to keep those labels up when actually it's those maybe those labels that have run its course or no longer really define who they are, and it's actually working against them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing is what we do is important. And so I say all the time, like, it's not life without labels because the things that we take pride in, our businesses, our roles, and our jobs, like, those are things that we should take pride in and should be proud of. I would say to those people, we all have something that we feel defined by, and it could be a business. It could also be your role at home as a caregiver or a spouse or whatever that might be that externally defines you. And we're all going to run into a time where that feels out of our control or life changes it unexpectedly. And as much as we think those things are in our control, they aren't. And so it's not even about, it's about noticing what's already within and what we already have. So going kind of underneath or going beyond what those labels are. Let's say you're a business owner. Well, what characteristics do you have that got you there? What kind of ambition did you have? Dedication, drive? Are you loyal to the people around you and that fostered connection and that created your business? Are you hardworking? Are you funny? Do you light up a room? And so those attributes and our attitude and the way that we treat people, those are all things that lead us to our decisions and building businesses and doing our jobs well. It's just what's underneath of that or what's beyond that and getting to know what that is. So I would encourage people because we can feel so lost when we actually think about what if that was stripped away from me or who am I outside of my business and thinking about who are you underneath of that and just taking the time to reflect on that can be grounding because it's going to change at some point regardless of if we want it to.
And I love what you shared, and I respect your transparency and honesty. I know when I learned the hard way, I used to fight these labels. Like I had to hang on to them because that's what people knew me by, and they were just bringing me down. Or and when I learned that sometimes that life changes, right? With either you're going to change with it or you're going to resist it. And I learned now I have to be able to adapt, and sometimes I may have to let go of something that no longer is who part of me or who I am. It was at one point, and now sometimes by learning to let go and embrace what is new, actually makes things a lot better. Even though, like in my head, it
Yeah.
wouldn't be better because I'm trying to control the control I can't control. And so when you can just let go and focus on what you control, and it's just so much more a freer feeling, so to speak. So no, I love what you just shared there. What would be some of the things that based upon when you went through this with softball, that all these things that you talked about, like what would be some things that you would say to start this process?
Yeah, absolutely. So honestly, the process for me started when I was recovering from my injury and I really couldn't do a lot. And when you have a head injury, as you understand, you can't really go on your phone. There's not a lot that you can do. And so I kind of made a list of things that were in my control. And a lot of that had to do with how I was treating people or the attitude that I could have. Because at this point, I wasn't even really sure how I was going to graduate, if I was going to graduate school well, or like what my future was going to be without the support of my family and the people around me. I just had no idea if I was going to get any better. And so making a list of these things that I could control at a core level, and how you treat people and your attitude, and really zeroing in on that and then applying it to what my bigger ambitions are and what my goals are. And so I think how we think about our challenges and then how we decide to move through them comes from just our internal characteristics. And so about a year later when I was had the opportunity to give this speech and it ends up going viral on the internet, I had been so grounded in who I was because I took the time to figure out myself and how I treat people in my core private inner circle life, my relationships, that even going viral just didn't change how I saw myself because I had built that foundation, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. Love it. Love that. And do you find that when you can, live beyond these labels, it's like you said, you're not tied, you're not like tied to any one thing. Like you can be more fluid, you could adapt. It doesn't mean you just, like you just let life whip you around, but
Yeah.
you kind of know when something has run its course, or something that, okay, this is not it was part of me, or it once worked for me, but now I'm on to something else that's leading me towards that. So I have to trust my, like, I guess your intuition, your gut, so to speak.
Yeah, well, even like you said, absolutely embracing change because even going from D1 athlete, then I was somebody who was kind of hit in the head all the time. That was my identity, I guess. And then it was someone who went viral. And now it's been 2 years since then. And so who am I continuing to grow to be? Because I don't want to be stuck in one thing forever, like you said. And so learning and growing and adapting and being willing to just evolve yourself and what you're passionate about, and that can change, and your interests and your relationships. I think if we have a growth mindset about all areas of our life, it can just make us better people. And so like you said, then we're not stuck in the next label that comes, because it's really easy to get stuck in our life and in what we feel like people know us as or know us for, and
Yeah.
one big moment kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, and you don't have to hide behind that label anymore. So I think that that's really, really, really wonderful. What would you say, based upon that, when you see, people doing that, like now if you got groups of people doing that, do you feel like, that can really hinder or, their performance, or, it can maybe hinder their creativity or innovation, whatever that may look like to what people are doing because they're so stuck on that one label. And now either an injury, like you said with you with concussions, I can relate to that. That happened to me. And then, some people just don't know how to adapt. Hey, if you were a leader on the field, well, tell you what, you could be a leader somewhere else. It doesn't have to be in sports. It could be something else. You just have to know how to tap into that and revamp it towards something, another area. If you could share any insights from that.
Yeah. Also, I'm sorry that you had those head injuries. I meant to say
Oh
that
yeah,
before,
no, I
but
did.
it's
I had
so
a
hard.
bad concussion, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I was hospitalized for 3 days, so I know what you're saying.
Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. But
Yeah.
um just to answer your question, I mean, I think absolutely it affects our performance. And it's interesting. I'm a social work graduate student right now. And so I do work in mental health and I work with athletes, so some performance-based things. And it's really interesting just even some of the practices of finding your identity and working on hobbies or different things outside of, in this case it's athletics, but it could be business, it could be really anything. It grows your confidence just in your own skin, and that translates to your performance. It helps you balance mentally. And so when you want to succeed, it's more of a want, which allows us to be free. It allows us to experiment, and make mistakes versus a need to have. When you focus in on one thing and you have to be successful at that one thing, there's a pressure to it. And so I would definitely say that expanding ourselves outside of our labels does translate to better performance. And isn't that our goal, anyways? And the reason we rationalize singling in on something when really we should be rationalizing balancing and figuring out who we are outside of one label.
It's so interesting that you just said that. Like, I'm a big football fan, and I remember when he talked about this a while back when he retired, and I just recently saw the follow-up interview they did, like about 5 6 years later after he retired. And I don't know if you remember this player or not, but his name was Andrew Luck, and he was a former first round pick for the Indianapolis Colts. He was their starting quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, like out of the blue, like 2 months before the draft, he decided to retire, and threw everybody like what? It wasn't like a life, like a seat, like a career-ending injury, anything like that. Yes, he had some concussions, like most players do, but he just knew that his when he was on the field, he wasn't 100% there, and he kept trying to keep the label, because his dad was a former NFL player, and it was like the legacy. He was a first round pick in the, I forgot what draft it was, but so he had to live up. He had to really live up to that label that he people expected him to be. But he really was able to be true to himself, and he said, I don't want to play the game anymore. My well-being is more important than getting stats, and maybe going to the Hall of Fame one day. And I just want to, maybe steer my talents in another direction. And that took a lot of guts to do. Can you
Yeah.
share like that? Like sometimes you, especially when you're dealing with athletes, when they're even forced into these situations by injury, they don't know what to do. They're still they still got it. They still get caught up in that label. They got to defend and protect.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just it's so difficult. And even I have talked to people that when they're retiring, like it's the same thing. Retiring from a career, it's like I've been in this career my whole life or I've been playing this sport my whole life. And so looking at the qualities that you gained or the skills that you gained while you were in that and really identifying them and then transferring them over into another part of your life. And that's just learning to pivot and you can translate those into something new. So we really work a lot on identifying what those qualities are that can't be taken away from you, even if the game was taken away from you. So that resilience, that strength, and then asking the question of how are you going to apply that to something new? What's something you're passionate about? What's a cause or something interesting? And you might not find something that gives you the same adrenaline rush or magic that the previous business or previous athletic life did, but you can still find something that we care about if we just talk about it and explore it and figure out what intangible qualities have you built up over the last several years through this sport that can be applied to something great in your life.
Absolutely. It's so true. And I love that how you articulated that. And, I would hope that the listeners out there listening now and those listening, listen to Kelsey, get to know her because there's a lot, maybe perhaps you've been hanging on to a job or maybe you've been stuck in a certain business because that's what what people expected of you, or that's what, you expected of yourself. And maybe now it's time to shed the label to look into something else that really aligns with your purpose that Kelsey talked about. What other insights do you feel like, from your experience, Kelsey, that you could share that people are now listening are going, wow, this is a wake up call for me. This is like really going to steer me in the right direction, what she's sharing. Anything else you feel that could help them, with where people are with this that may be struggling to make that change?
Yeah, I mean, I just something that came to mind when you brought up the Andrew Luck example, which is such a good example of somebody that's really checking in and staying true to their authentic self and their decisions. And so I say a lot that changing your mind doesn't mean that you wasted your time. And so I think sometimes we feel like we have to stay committed to the version of our former self that decided to pursue a certain path or a certain career or a certain business. And so if we change our mind, then all that's wasted. And it's truly not time wasted if you've learned something about yourself. And so I would say for choice labels, then that's really applies of like you can change your mind and you probably learned and grew and can use those transferable skills. And then when it's a label that maybe we can't control, if it's something that's kind of stuck with us or something like even for myself as a retired athlete, feeling like I failed because I didn't accomplish what I had envisioned, it didn't turn out the way that I thought it would, kind of just learning to accept it and just decide that like you didn't fail. Like just not looking at things as failure, but
You're
truly
right. Yeah.
opportunity.
Exactly. You accept it and then you adapt, and that's not easy. But I mean, it's such a breath of fresh air to hear somebody young as yourself have figured that out. Where a lot of times people don't figure this out until a little later. They've struggled. They've made they put themselves in just kept themselves in situations where they've just been suffering in silence because of just again just to uphold that label other than really pursue what was true to them at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and even when you mentioned struggling in silence, like I think that's another thing is asking other people if you don't know what qualities you have or you feel completely lost outside of this identity, like asking some people that you trust and love, what is it that you like about me or what are some of my qualities? Like it's a very vulnerable thing to ask, but can also be a very helpful way to figure out how other people see us and how we might be portraying ourselves when we feel completely lost in our identity. And so I know that's something that helped me. And so everybody has something that they feel defined by. And so it's a work in progress at all times to be figuring out who we are and staying authentic to that. And that really helps us to thrive in those areas of our life.
That's fabulous. So glad to hear that there, and so important. So share with us, like what are you working on right now? Like as you make you've made this pivot. you're helping more people. You're tapping into another zone of genius right now. What's on the horizon for you?
Oh my gosh, thank you for asking. That's a good question. So I'm graduating from graduate school this May. And
Oh,
so honestly,
congratulations. Wow, that's right around the corner.
yes, it is. I'm gearing up. So, yeah, that's been really exciting because it really is this new chapter of, again, kind of changing this course of my life. I'm not a student anymore. I really want to do speaking full time, and that just came out of nowhere after one video on the internet and really leaning into
Yeah, and
learning
why
how
don't you
much I
share
love.
about that video that really played a part in your pivot and to this day has really inspired a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. So I was very fortunate. I healed from my injury after about 10 months. And then I had a whole year after that. So I had a full senior year, pretty recovered, healthy, and well. And I applied to speak at NC State's commencement ceremony and I was selected. And so I gave this speech at PNC Arena full of like 18,000 people. And I posted a video of it online the next month. I hadn't posted on TikTok before. My friends convinced me to do it, and it went viral overnight. And then it got picked up on Facebook and YouTube and all the other platforms, and it's up to like 50 million views, which is just so crazy. But it's not
Wow.
about the numbers, but it's just so beautiful how many people from around the world resonate with feeling defined by something, and people of all ages, all walks of life that ended up messaging me and sharing their stories and inviting me to speak at conferences and businesses. And so I just feel like the most grateful person in the world that yeah, that people are willing to share their own stories with me, and that my story of feeling shattered by these labels and pivoting and figuring out who I was underneath of that hit the hearts of a lot of other people as well. And so that turned into a speaking career that I was building as I went, seeing if it was something that I like to do, just kind of saying yes to every offer. And then it morphed into an opportunity to just kind of continue to build. And so that's my goal, is to continue
That's
speaking full
fabulous.
time, but
Things
we'll
one
see.
like one how one video, a viral video, could get you picked up by a couple, maybe some speaker bureaus. Some people reach out to you direct to do a keynote, and you did this without any prior speaking experience or keynote experience. It just sort of got thrown into it, like from that video, which sometimes
Hmm.
it happens that way, and which is fabulous. Now it's a matter of just continue to grow and expand so you can reach more people and impact them.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, I hope I love sharing the story just because I want other people to be inspired by themselves, not impressed by me, but even
Yes.
just that it takes one moment of just authenticity and overcoming your own challenges to spark something completely new and a new direction in your life. I'm grateful that it happened for me. And so I encourage other people to believe that it can happen for them as well.
Wow.
But
Fabulous. Just in 30 seconds, any final thought that you'd like to leave with the audience as we end the show?
Just kind of wrapping up life beyond labels, as I know this is a business podcast, so I just think authenticity in who you are, regardless of what your business is, goes such a long way. And that's what I feel like, whether it's the video or whatever in my life that kind of launched me forward, authenticity is at the core of who we are and what makes a successful person and business and everything. So I would encourage people to just be their authentic selves. And thank you so much for having me. I
Oh,
really
no, absolutely.
appreciate
And how
it.
can people reach out to you? If you could share, like, if whether if it's a website, an email, best way for them to contact you and get connected.
Yes, so my website is kelseyo'connor.com. O'Connor's with an O-R. And my email is kelsey@kelseyo'connor.com. So people can reach me that way.
All right, easy to remember, everybody. It's her full name. Yeah, as
Yes.
I got the same. Chris at ChristopherSalem.com. Always easy to remember somebody's name that way. So we encourage everybody to reach out to Kelsey, especially any meeting planners, event planners, corporate planners, or just about any organization that could benefit from her story and how she can, you could have grit and resilience to kind of now adapt and not hide behind those labels. Again, I think it's such a great topic that could help so many people. So again, feel free to reach out to Kelsey. Kelsey, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be here with us.
Oh my gosh, Chris, thank you. It's such a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And listeners, we want to thank you each and every week joining us here at Business Influencers. Again, we are committed to bringing in subject matter experts like Kelsey to share their words of wisdom and insights to help raise your level of influence to the next level. Again, if you'd like to see future content that has not been covered in the show, don't forget, reach out to us here at chris@christophersalem.com. Till then, everybody, have a great rest of your week, and we will see you same time next week. Take care.